All systems go. Clear for liftoff. We have data. What's going on, everybody? My name's Bill. Put $1 in front of it. You'll find me on Discord and Twitter. And welcome to the Week 2 Ship It Nation College Football Show. I say we have data, but what data do we really have? I mean, there's a lot of FCS teams that these teams played, but we're starting to ease into some of these bigger games, more, one conference matchup, one that should be a conference matchup, but isn't because of the open schedule. I don't understand how it all works, but we have some good games. We have some stinkers, just some absolute blowouts on this slate. We'll dive in just a second, but I do need to mention, if you go to our website, shipitnation.com, you will still see this football early bird special up at the top of the website. I guess if it's on the website, we're going to go past the deadline that was supposed to be September 3rd. We are, in fact, keeping it up until Sunday. The early bird special still qualifies, and you are still eligible for the golden SHIPIT and the early bird and annual bonus ticket. So we'll announce that winner on the Sunday main show for NFL. So if you do sign up between now and then for this early bird special, really any all access special, get that SaberSim membership included. You are still eligible for the golden SHIPIT. And I want to talk briefly about that. I know I've talked about it a lot, but it's just such a cool thing that SHIPIT's doing. You can see the cash prize is almost $80,000 at the top. Essentially how it works is that you get qualifying ballots to earn these golden SHIPIT tickets. There's a few different ways you can do that. You can see the prizes here. Top prize is $20,000 plus a year SHIPIT Nation and SaberSim. That's a huge value right there in and of itself. Plus a $20,000. That ain't bad. I'll take it. And the reason that this is even more enticing is because these prizes are only going to go up. The share of SHIP, I've gone through it before. You can go to shipitnation.com or shipitgames.com to learn more about it. But you get entered into a contest with their $333 Wildcat, and a portion of that will go into the prize pool. So this pool will get even bigger. And I do want to mention as well, I mentioned that SaberSim comes with it because we do partner with SaberSim now, if you don't already know. So we have plenty of packages with this at your disposal. But again, the SHIPIT games, such a cool thing that, we're not seeing across the industry, something we wanted to do to give back to our community. And like I said, still time to get in on that early bird special. And if you rock one of these logos, you go to shipitnation.com, click more, click logos. That'll bring you to the winner circle page with SaberSim. It's the winner circle by SaberSim. Again, we're partnering with them. So this is something they included us on. If you rock one of these avatars, you're an active SHIPIT Nation and SaberSim member. You post your screenshot on Twitter, X, of $1,000 win or more. The fine details are down here. Top 5 in a DFS contest has to be at least 10x your entry. But there are different tiers for how much you win in those contests. So post with one of these approved logos. And again, they let us in on the Rolex watch Millie Maker, and SHIPIT Nation does have 4 Millie Makers. So it's not out of the question that could be you. But again, jump in on this early bird special while there's still time. We're kicking off NFL season, already off to a shocking start, we'll say, with Dallas and Philadelphia, the lightning delay. Just let them play, right? No, I'm just kidding. Safety first, I guess. But anyway, NFL season's in full swing, college football season. Oh, yeah, by the way, included with this football package. We don't sell them separate. We give it all to you in one package, $349 for football for the entire year. And if you love SHIPIT Nation and want to keep doing more sports, we have plenty of all-access packages you can jump in on as well. With all that said, let's jump into the stone. I saw your comments last week. Now you only have to skip to 422 to start hearing the data about this week. It's fun, but, like I said, I just want to make sure you're all in the loop on what's going on at SHIPIT Nation because we have so many awesome things going on right now. As far as the slate goes, like I said, there's some good games. There's some stinkers. We're going to start off with a blowout. San Jose State at Texas. You can see a 36.5-point spread. San Jose looked bad. They lost to Central Michigan at home, and now they get a Texas team that's probably pissed off after losing to Ohio State. I know Ohio State's a good team. Like, they shouldn't feel bad about it. It was on the road, but they're still not happy about it. nothing's 100% in college football, but this is probably as close as we'll get this 100% chance of being a blowout. We'll go 99.9. Walter Eggett had a couple of picks, but they mixed in their other quarterback in some packages. Floyd Chalk will not be chalk this week. The only one person maybe you want to take a shot on is Danny Scudero, the Sac State transfer. He had a good amount of catches, 10 targets, I believe. And, if you're going to get 6 to 8 catches again and he finds the end zone, that's going to be a low-owned dart that appears to be maybe the most talented player on this offense. But we're not going to talk too much about San Jose State with an 8-point team total. On the Texas side, it's just a pricing thing, man. And Arch, again, it was Ohio State, so we didn't expect him to look like the second coming, but he didn't look great. But I imagine this is going to be a bounce-back game for him. And I wouldn't be surprised if Sark wants to run him out and get his feet under him a little bit more, throw the ball a little bit more, get him a few touchdowns. So it's just that $9,600 is a little bit tough to pay on the slate like this. You'll see other quarterbacks that are much cheaper, and even some that are only a little cheaper that are in better spots. Wisner had 41 offensive snaps to Baxter's 26, so we are seeing a split there. Baxter had a few catches out of the back. He caught all 5 of his targets, so he does have some catching upside. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised to see both guys have 100 all-purpose yards. Probably looking at Baxter for the discount here. You might see a mix of these other guys in the backfield too if it gets out of hand, but that's yet to be seen. The wide receiver room, again, it's a pricing thing. Ryan Wingo had 8 targets, but he only had 2 catches. 7,300 again, tough to pay. 6,200 for Jack Endries, tough to pay. Livingstone and Moore didn't have as many targets, but they were on the field. And Emmett Mosley is trending toward either not playing or having a snap count. So Livingstone at 3,500 is maybe somewhere you want to go if you do want to get a piece of this game, but just kind of a stinker of a game, a get right spot for Texas. San Jose State, they didn't look good. And unless they get something fixed, this is going to be just, I don't know if you can call it embarrassing because it's Texas, but probably not going to be a good game for them. Ooh, a better game. No. Florida International with a 6.5-point team total going on the road against Penn State. FIU looks solid, but they played an FCS team, 28-6 at halftime. They did what they needed to do, but this is just a different animal. Kewan Jenkins is a familiar name, but I don't even know how much I want to talk about. The one thing I will say is it seems like you should play a running back with the last name Carey, but I don't think you're going there here. This would be just an extreme dart throw. I wouldn't be surprised to see all these guys get sub 1% ownership. For Penn State, kind of a similar matchup that we saw last week. They kicked a lot of field goals. They just couldn't quite punch it in, and maybe that's them getting their feet wet into the season. Maybe it's them only using 30% of their playbook because they didn't have to. We could very well see that again against an inferior team. And if you look at the numbers last week at their current prices, but for sure, or at their prices last week, but for sure at their current prices, none of these guys hit except for Kyron Hudson. And he was one of our top plays at SHIPIT last week, just an FYI. Any one of these guys are on the table with a 48-point team total, but that price on Hudson still probably hasn't gone up enough for how many looks he got last week. So again, kind of like Texas, if you want pieces of this with the high point total, any one of these guys could very well get there. But now for something completely different, we have a big point total. Baylor at SMU, 31.5-point implied team total is a 2.5-point underdog for Baylor. Sawyer Robertson, probably too cheap. We know he can put up a huge ceiling. The one thing is he didn't run a ton. Or actually, he didn't run at all last week against Auburn. It could have been the game script, the way the game played out. But we know he does have the ability, so that's something we'll have to watch closely. At 7,700, though, I do think that he's viable here, and Baylor could very well win this game. I mean, Auburn is a good team. They're going to be tough to beat, I think, in the SEC this year. So, it's not a knock on Baylor that they lost that game, but, Sawyer Robertson's at a fair price. Bryson Washington, also an appropriate price. We know what he's capable of at 8,900. He did have a bigger workload last week. Caden Knighton is a little bit intriguing at this price, 3,200, because he did mix in quite a bit. And Baylor previously has run 2 to 3 man rotations. Right now, they just don't have the bodies, especially with Dawson Pendergrass out. Knighton could be one of those high risk, high reward GPP plays. But now to what could be my favorite part of the show, Tight ends. Michael Trigg, 16 targets. Are you kidding me? Maybe we won't get to that number again, but 4,300. I mean, come on. If this might be the lock of the slate, as close to a lock as you can possibly get. He's a big part of this offense dating back to last season. And the fact that he picked right back up with 16 targets last week, I'm going to be all over that. And I think a lot of the industry, they should be. I don't know if they will be, but they should be. The reason I say they might not be is just because of how volatile this Baylor wide receiver room and all these pass catchers have been before. We've seen him spread it out a lot. Cole Wilson had 11 targets, a Texas State transfer. So he's enticing at 4,600 of himself, but you could go Hawkins, you could go Cameron, you could go Louis Brown, Kobe Prentice. I mean, Kobe Prentice had a couple of targets in the end zone or red zone. One of them led to a touchdown. So, really any one of these guys could get there, but we know what we have in Michael Trigg and we know the history there. So 4,300, a tight end, I'm going to be all in on that. On the SMU side is the favorite. Kevin Jennings looked pretty good against an FCS school. So he should have. I mean, he maybe could have been a little bit better based on the competition, but it's week 1 and he's a little bit more expensive, but if you're looking at the favorite in this high total game, a lot of eyes are going to be on Kevin Jennings as a quarterback, especially if you're going to stack Baylor in any capacity. He's the easy run back here. In this running back room, Derek McFall and TJ Harden split drives to begin the game last week. Neither box score is really going to jump out at you. Personally, I think TJ Harden is the better back and should emerge. Now, is that going to happen? I don't know. They had Rashard Smith last year as a workhorse back, but I don't know if that's going to continue into this year. Before that, they did have a rotation. Like I said, I like Harden, but we could very easily see a 50-50 split between these two. And then Chris Johnson Jr., the only cool thing about him is that he is CJ2K's son. So he could mix in 3,200. You're not looking at him. It's just, just a fun fact. I like to mix in a few of those here, especially to break up all of this many targets, this many catches, this part of the rotation. I like fun facts. It's fun for me. I hope it's fun for you too. Romello Brinson, man, he had a great DFS day. A lot of it was on one long touchdown, like a 63-yard touchdown. But he did have 9 targets, so definitely somebody you're looking at 4,800. But really intriguing is this Jalen Cooper. He's a true freshman. He was targeted early and often. So at mid-price in a game environment like this, if he's going to get the targets and if they like him as an up-and-coming freshman, we've seen some freshmen pop before. So 3K, why not? Then the rest of this wide receiver, RJ Maryland, still coming off that injury. He didn't have quite as many targets as he normally would, but he may still be getting his feet back under him. He's basically playing the slot this year. James Madison transfer, Ymir Knight is involved. It could be Hibner, it could be Goffney. Like I said, Brinson and Cooper are the guys I'm looking at. But we know SMU's wide receiver room. It's kind of like Baylor's. They spread the ball around a lot. And then the other thing that's helping these guys is that veteran wide receiver for SMU, Jordan Hudson, settle down, hoodie, not that Jordan Hudson, got hurt on the first play of the game last week. His status is up in the air, but he's really trending toward not playing. So again, you're going to want pieces of this game. You can stack it multiple ways, quarterback, wide receiver, or tight end on the Baylor side. Bryson Washington with a run back of Kevin Jennings and maybe one of his wide receivers, maybe naked Kevin Jennings. I mean, there's a lot of different ways you can play this game. Find your process, find what you like, find a way to get different, especially in those big GPPs. If there are going to be people coming to this game because of the total, it's not about who you play, it's about how you play them. It's something we say at SHIPIT all the time. Learned it from our head honcho Tambo. You'll hear him say it a lot too. So that this is one of these games if the ownership does get up there. But I will say I didn't mention in these first 2 games because it doesn't really apply. But I do think ownership is going to be spread out a little bit this week because there are just so many good plays, whether it's due to mispricing or, workhorse backs or like value wide receivers, whether they're mispriced or not, just the spots they're in this week. So definitely find your guys, find your path to how they can get your lineups there. So don't be afraid to play guys because of ownership for the most part. Because I just don't think there's going to be a ton of guys getting super high. And if they do, it very well could mean a GPP fade that could lead you to the promised land just because of how many good plays there are. Iowa State, we have the Cyhawk game, and typically you bet the under. I predict this is going to be a 17-10 game, just like I feel like it is every single year. I think one year was even like 10-9. It's Iowa's first test of the season. They beat Albany last week. Mark Gronowski could be on your radar because he's only 5,600 and he is mobile. He can run. And there's been a lot of hype about him. As much as you can hype up an Iowa quarterback, I don't know how much you value that. But, it decent value, maybe not the greatest on this slate, but not the worst for sure. But some better value in this running back room because Kamari Moulton is out. So it's going to be Terrell Washington and Xavier Williams, 3,100, 3,000. It does seem like Washington is going to be the 1A of the 1A, 1B, but really either of these guys, I do like both of them. Washington probably gets a slight lean just because of his work last week. And Jason Patterson was in the mix last week, but it wasn't until later in the game. So we could see a dash of him, but I'm not super hell-bent on playing him, especially since he's that much more expensive than the other two. These receivers are mostly just cheap. If you think Iowa's going to throw the ball a little bit more in this game, maybe you take a shot. I don't even really want to talk about him. We haven't really seen a tight end take over like a Sam Laporta, George Kittle, TJ Hawkinson. Maybe a Stranger could be that guy, but right now, probably just looking at Gronowski and the running backs if you're going to Iowa. On the Iowa State side, their season has started pretty good. I mean, the win in Dublin was big, regardless of how sloppy it was. Rocco Becht is Rocco Becht. He might get more expensive in other spots. This is probably just a game environment when 6,500 is the right price. So I don't know that I'm looking at him here. This is maybe one you want to keep in his pocket if he stays cheap in future weeks. Carson Hansen did get a little bit more of the workload, but it's been a pretty balanced timeshare. I don't really care for either of them here. This seems like a slate where there's a lot of good running backs in the mid-range that outweigh these two, and then there's obviously some expensive workhorses. So maybe you want to pay up at running back. They're just GPP darts, if anything. And then this pass catching room is a little bit of a mess. Burkle and Bramer are leading the way as the two tight ends, and Eskelson is actually I don't know if I'd say premier wide receiver, but he's been the best of the bunch so far. Like Chase Soule and Xavier Townsend are supposed to, be the guys. I don't know if they're going to ever turn into like a Higgins-Noel pairing, but they could, form a similar pairing. They're both talented enough. Soule was supposed to be the big transfer. He just hasn't been involved yet. So until we see it, I don't know that we can pull the trigger on those guys, especially in a game against Iowa that has historically hit the under. Another blowout. Kent State. I hope you all bet Merrimack to cover the spread. I know we had some people in our community that did. Not much I want to say here about Kent State is 45, a 5-point team total. I mean, honestly, if this hits, if they do get a safety somehow, that might be the most exciting thing. Obviously, it's bound to change too. Maybe they'll give them an extra point if they kick 2 field goals. Cade Wolford, kind of a bright spot, but he was more of a wide receiver than a running back in that game last week. Jordan Newman's a Gopher transfer, but he didn't play. I just want to say Derelis Clark because it's a cool name, but other than that, you're not looking at Kent State. On the Texas Tech side, they looked good last week. They played Arkansas Pine Bluff, but there's some fun things to talk about with Texas State here, or Texas Tech. They played Arkansas Pine Bluff last week, and they had a lightning delay. So they actually only played 8-minute quarters in the second half. Now, why is this important? They still won 67-7, but it affected the betting market. I don't know if I fully understand it. Basically, the breakdown I was given is that bets were voided because you need to play at least like 55 minutes of a game in order for the bets to qualify. Maybe it's just on the over-under for the game total, but I got to imagine there were some bettors that were pretty upset with the lightning delay and the timing of the game. The other crazy thing with Texas Tech is that they won by 60 and dropped a spot in the AP poll. Now, if you look at the AP poll, maybe you could form an argument for why that happened, but kids see stuff on social media. They're on the internet all the time. So maybe that's something that lights a little fire under them and they want to just win by 65 this week. If 60 wasn't enough, let's beat Kent State by 65. Arkansas Pine Bluff might beat Kent State, honestly. So this is a game you can look at some of these guys. Baron Morton looked good. He should be able to handle Kent State. He had some leg soreness, but it seems like he's going to play. How much he plays is yet to be determined. Cam Dickey had the highest workload in the backfield, but Jacoby Williams was really effective when he did see the field. I don't know that I would spend $1,300 more for Williams, even if he is going to be the more effective back. But this is a running back room you can target. Just, in the first half, both of these guys could get there, kind of like the Wisner, Baxter, Singleton, Allen. Like in this matchup, anything goes, even if they only play a half. Reggie Virgil was the leader in the clubhouse with 6 targets, but last week, 12 different guys got targets and 7 had 2 or more for Texas Tech. Caleb Douglas and Coy Eakin have the name cred, and they're the other 2 guys who will probably start. Carter and Giancarlos Miller, your tight ends. Micah Hudson is the other guy who would be up next. But again, it's really how you want to play it. Carter is intriguing at 3,800 just because he was involved last week. And he's going to be on the field. So it's, again, 53.5 points. There's a good chance you're going to want a piece of this team. It's just finding the right formula with these guys. I mean, just one thing that you can do, honestly, I would advise this. If you're looking at these big blowouts, especially if they were blowouts last week too, like Texas Tech, we got a good idea of what they're going to do. They're probably not going to be a lightning delay this week. Now, knock on wood. Look at the play-by-play. See who was involved early before the games got out of hand. And those may be the guys that you want to look toward. Or if you do predict a blowout and you look at the guys who got a lot of work after the fact, maybe you take a shot on them. That's a little bit more risky because we don't really like to predict blowouts, even if they're pretty evident. But yeah, look at the play-by-plays from these box scores. So you can see kind of who was involved early and often. Illinois and Duke. This is a little bit more of a sneaky game. On paper, they seem like a couple of sloggier teams, but if each team gets one more touchdown than their implied team total, we're talking about Baylor SMU numbers. So Illinois did what they needed to against Western Illinois. Illinois' offensive line returns everybody. Altmaier, kind of like Baron Morton, just did what he needed to do. He'll probably play this whole game, though, and 6,400 is a good price for him. He had kind of a roller coaster season last year when it came to DFS, so it's not the most intriguing play in the world, but somebody that you may want to take a look at, especially if this game does hit the over. Josh McCray's gone out of this backfield, so Aiden Lafrey and Caden Fagan are the guys. Valentine might mix in a little bit. Lafrey started last week, and he was a more effective back, and he had 2 catches. Again, it's a tougher defense, Duke, over Western Illinois, but 4,200 is a price tag that I'm going to have my eye on. Hank Beatty caught all 5 of his targets. Justin Bowick, the transfer in, had a big game with 2 touchdowns. Colin Dixon played every game last year as a redshirt freshman and played the most passing snaps of any of these wide receivers. So these top 3 guys for sure are ones that you want to take a look at. I like Beatty and Bowick because of their price, but there's no saying that Dixon isn't going to be, the 20-point scoring wide receiver on this team. Hudson Clement could see the field. He did. He's from West Virginia, and Tanner Arkin's a tight end, so he'll be out there. So these guys, again, a situation where it's still early, so it could be any one of them. But Arlene is Beatty, Dixon, and Bowick. On the Duke side, Tulane transfer Darian Mintz is one of the bigger quarterback transfers of the offseason. He played the whole game despite it being Elon, but that's because they didn't get up big until late in the game. Did have a pretty monster game, though. Illinois is just a different animal. Like Altmaier, it's tough to ignore with a price at 6,200. There's a good chance, though, that Illinois bottles him up and makes him throw, which, if Duke's game planning for that, Mensa can toss the rock a little bit. Jaquez Moore has been at Duke for 5 years now. He did start last week, but Peyton Jones is also involved, also has experience at Duke. Nate Shepard is a true freshman who they were raving about at camp. He got some work last week too, and it is Will Shepard's younger brother, so he does have the genes. And then Anderson Castle is a 6th-year player in from App State. He's technically listed as second on the depth chart, but he was never really a feature back at App State. I don't know that he will be in other than certain situations at Duke. It's kind of a muddled backfield, though, so I don't know if you want to take a chance on any of these guys. Moore probably be the one, but this might be a waiting to see if this backfield opens up a little bit for one of these guys. And then you got Cooper Barcade in this wide receiver room. He's in from Harvard, and he got a lot of love from Mensa in week 1. He had 8 targets, so 4,900 is not a bad price. Sean Brown and Samir Higgins are familiar names at Duke. Andrew Anthony's in from Oklahoma. Jeremiah Hazley's a tight end. So, these guys, again, I like Barcade here just because he's not super expensive. He's kind of priced right, and he got a lot of targets. But again, only 1 week of data. So This is one of those sneaky games where if you do think it hits the over, you could do a Mensa stack with one or two of these wide receivers, probably not two, but at least one, and then run it back with Loffer if you want to, or a naked Altmaier if he does use his legs a little bit more in this game. This is a cheap enough game. You could go Altmaier and a receiver and Mensa and a receiver if you do think they're going to be a little bit more pass happy. I don't know that I would predict that for these two teams, but again, it's still early and they're going to do whatever they can to win these ball games. And this is one of the more competitive ball games on the slate. So they're going to be pulling out all the stops. Virginia at North Carolina State. New look Virginia beat the brakes off of Coastal last week. They come in as an underdog here, albeit just a 2.5 point spread. Chandler Morris, he's just too cheap. He does have a questionable tag, but it sounds like it's something minor. It could also be precautionary. I mean, they were up so big against Coastal last week, but we know he can put up 400-yard games. He did it at North Texas. Will they open him up like that here consistently? Maybe when they need to, maybe all the time. That's something that's yet to be determined, but at 6,300, he's got my eye. Xavier Brown and Jamari Taylor led this backfield. They started the game in a timeshare. Eventually, Noah Vaughn kind of started working himself in. Harrison Whaley is in from Wyoming, but most of his production was after the blowout was in full force. Again, it's a pricing thing here. They're very affordable, so I don't mind it. They're not the first ones I'm running to, but I don't mind it at all. But this wide receiver room, Cam Harris, is still only 3,500. He had 9 targets, 124 yards, and a touchdown last week. Seemed to be a favorite of Chandler Morris. But Trell Harris has the pedigree here at Virginia, and then Jamal Edrine is in from Purdue. Both of them had decent games. Edrine's game log looks better because he scored, and then Dakota Twitty's the tight end. But Cam Ross, that price tag is something that I jumped to. 3,500 for the most targeted wide receiver in week 1. And it helps that he had a huge game, but even with the target share alone is, a sub 4K wide receiver. We do see this quite a bit in college football DFS where somebody has even mid-season where they're consistently getting 6 to 7 targets a game and they're priced at 4K or below. So Ross is definitely somebody I'm going to be looking at here. Easy to stack and run back with Bailey and or Smothers. Bailey took a $2,500 price hit. And I understand it's a different slate. There's more teams on this slate, and there's a lot different talent at the quarterback position on this slate. But 2,500 was a little egregious of a drop, especially after he had a 300-yard passing game and has rushing upside. Love him in this spot. Hollywood Smothers also getting discounted, albeit not quite as much as Bailey. He had 26 touches, 22 carries, and 4 catches. That's an $8,000 running back minimum. So why he's 6,500 in a game where they're favored to win and score 28 points is not something I understand. Yes, Jaden Scott mixed in some, but not enough for me to shy away from Smothers. So this is actually, even though it's a lower total than SMU and Baylor, we know a little bit more where this usage is going to go, especially on the North Carolina State side. So this is a good looking spot for these guys. Noah Rogers is cleared to play, but he seemed pretty non-existent last week anyway. Could it change? Absolutely. Terrell Anderson and Teddy Hoffman both had 6 targets. Justin Jolie caught all 5 of his targets, and he has the history at NC State. Wesley Grimes was on the field quite a bit. Keenan Jackson saw some work early, but ended up with only 2 targets on the night. Again, another situation where we don't quite have this receiver room figured out. We still think it's going to be Rogers and Jolie long-term, whether it comes to fruition in this game or not. I do like all of these guys, but they're probably all priced about right. So if you do want to stack this game, you don't need to stack a receiver with Bailey, but you certainly can, especially in MME, and then run it back with, Morris Ross, or if you want to take a stance on one of these running backs, it's not the worst play in the world. And then we have Connecticut at Syracuse. It's only a 6.5 point spread, which historically Connecticut would be shocking, but they have gotten a lot better. They took care of business against an FCS school, which again is not something you can always say about UConn. Joe Fagnano did great. We'll see how he does against better competition, but it's a nice price tag. Cam Edwards and Mel Brown led the backfield. They did the same thing last year. Edwards had a big 73-yard touchdown run. I don't know that I'd pay $5,900 for him, especially when the guy right below him at 4,000 could get equal carries. And then Victor Rosa could mix in. The wide receiver room's a little bit more intriguing. Romello Murphy, formerly of Arizona, and Skylar Bell, formerly of Wisconsin, got involved early and often last week. Bell is probably priced right. Romello Murphy is not. If this is going to be the offense moving forward, $3,400 is way too cheap for Murphy. And then you got Ty Chakiao Bowman. It's pretty good, huh? He was on the field early as well, so he's somebody you could look at. If you look at the box score, Jackson Harper had the most targets, but that was well after the game was in hand. He could still see the field here, though. And then Syracuse, tough road matchup at Tennessee last week. They didn't look terrible, still got smoked. Steve Angeli was fine, did about what I would have expected him to do, but this is definitely a bounce back spot at home in a controlled environment, 32.5 point team total. I mean, what more do you want? This game could go fast. I wouldn't be surprised if this game hits the over. This is a little bit sneakier one to stack too. People aren't used to stacking UConn, but it could happen. So I like Angeli. Yassine Willis was a bigger surprise to me. I think he had 23 carries last week. I knew he was going to play, but 23 carries in a monster game was not necessarily on my bingo card on the road against Tennessee. Will Nixon still did mix in. He seems like more of a pass catcher. But if Willis is going to fall into this LaQuint Allen role, I can't imagine he's going to be 6,300 for long. So get him at a discount while you can. Jonte Cook is in from Texas, seemed to be Angeli's favorite target. 10 targets and 7 catches last week, and he did get a touchdown. Again, SHIPIT Nation said he was going to be the best wide receiver on the team, and he ended up being that. Sorry, humble brag. I got to do it when we can, right? Dan Villari and Justice Ross Simmons each had 7 targets too. So those are the 3 that were mostly featured, but we know Darryl Gill from last year and years past that he could get involved. I don't know about 6,500 when there's 3 cheaper guys that got more production last week. Emmanuel Ross might suit up this week. We'll have to see. I don't know how involved he's going to be, but that could, throw a little bit of a wrench in the mix. But like I said, this is a sneakier game just because I think people are going to go to the Syracuse side some, but we're just not used to playing Connecticut. And there will be some it's gotten sharper. So people will play these guys. It's just a matter of how much. Mississippi at Kentucky. We have an injury report for this game because it's an SEC conference game. Rebs cakewalk matchup. Austin Simmons did put up pretty big numbers in his first start, but he also had a couple of pretty bad interceptions. Hopefully that's something he just got out of his system. Because if he's the real deal, this is a game where, if they hit their team total, a lot of it's going to be because of Simmons and Lacey. I will remind you that last year, this was the game that kind of dashed Ole Miss's CFP hopes. They were still technically in it, but the loss to Kentucky last year was not a pretty one. Kawan Lacey, I did mention him a little briefly, but he might be a workhorse. It's only been 1 week, but he got 16 more snaps and 9 more carries than Logan Diggs. And at 5,300, it's something that I'm going to look at here. Harrison Wallace at 4,900, in from Penn State. Daquan White, returning tight end. They got the early targets from Simmons. And I like Wright even more because Luke Haas is going to be out again this week. So Wright's got a stranglehold on that tight end position. The one thing is that Caden Lee and DeJohn's dribbling, we know the cred is there. We know they can do it. They were also in the mix. It just happened that the targets went to the other guys. Will we continue to see that? Yet to be determined, but it could really be any one of these top 4 guys. And then on the Kentucky side, Zach Calzada is gross, 10 for 23, 85 yards against an inferior opponent last week. But, some would say that Kentucky and Toledo are pretty evenly matched, so I don't know if I can even go that far. Dowdle and McGowan were bright spots for him. They're still really cheap. I just don't know. If they can't complete a downfield pass, they have to use Dowdle and McGowan. It's just a matter of how much they can do. If Kentucky's going to make, or if Mississippi's going to make Kentucky throw the ball, I'm not really sure how well we can trust Dowdle and McGowan. I mean, they can catch the ball too, but this wide receiver room, again, it's Calzada's fault, but I don't think you can play any of these guys. Maybe wait and see, or if Calzada can start throwing the ball, or until they put Cutter Boley in. I mean, that is a very big possibility. But the way I see it, this is an inferior offense that you will hardly want to play all year. See what I did there? Anything. I don't. Mostly looking at the backs, but I don't even know how much I love them here. 20 points is, I think, probably a little bit generous, honestly. Kansas at Missouri. Do we have the real Jalen Daniels? It certainly seems like it after the first couple of weeks. This is by far the toughest test for them this season, a road matchup against a good Missouri team. If he's going to be able to run like he did against Fresno, 6,600 is far too cheap. So I don't mind Jalen Daniels here. I think he can do it against any team as long as his offense has the stability to help him out. Daniel Highshaw did fine in game 1, better in game 2, but that was against Wagner, and LaShawn Williams wasn't there, so they had to lean on him a little bit more early. LaShawn Williams looked like the better back in week 0, though, so that kind of throws a wrench into this backfield. We still think it's going to be Highshaw, but Williams is definitely going to mix in if he's healthy. I don't know that he's, injured, or if it was precautionary. It definitely probably hurt him, but this is a backfield that's probably priced right if it's going to be a timeshare. And then Cam Pickett was the favorite in week 1. Henderson had a big game in week 2. Again, it was against Wagner, but these seem to be the top 2 guys. You could look at somebody like Levi Wentz has been on the field, but I don't know how much you're going to want to look at him with, again, this slate. There's a lot of value at wide receiver. On the Mizzou side, it's Bo Pribula's quarterback job since Sam Horn got hurt. He's a Penn State transfer. You may remember transferred out during the playoffs, actually before the playoffs started, because of the way the scheduling works. It's unfortunate, but just how it happened. But he's got rushing upside. They brought him in at Penn State. He played at Penn State and was in on like Wildcat style formations. So his upside is at 6,100 is unreal for somebody with this much rushing upside, especially since Sam Horn's not going to eat into any of his snaps. Ahmad Hardy was listed as co-starter with Jamal Roberts, and they still are this week. I think Roberts actually started the game, but Hardy mixed in early and had just the better game. That's why he's priced like that. He's the ULM transfer, but he seems to be the better back. Is he 7,000 to 3,400 better? I don't know, but I do give Hardy the slight lean just because of his production. Again, not a ton of data to work off of, but Hardy seems to have the better, the better chance to get there. This wide receiver room, Kevin Coleman from Mississippi State, Marquise Johnson, and Josh Manning. Those are your 3 guys with Brett Norfleet at tight end. Coleman and Johnson got the targets. Johnson had a monster game. Again, early, don't write anything in stone. It could be any one of these guys, but Johnson, Coleman, and Manning are the 3 guys you're really looking at. This isn't a high total. Again, it's a sneaky one, though. If you get the right wide receiver with Daniels, or you don't need to stack either of these quarterbacks, however you want to play it, both of them are mobile. So you could go either way. You could play the running backs. You could play the wide receivers. There's run backs all over the place here, with really the only expensive piece being Ahmad Hardy. And I guess Kevin Coleman Jr. is a little bit expensive in terms of wide receivers on the slate, but I don't mind it. Don't mind this game at all. Oklahoma State at Oregon. Blowout city. And if anybody heard Gundy earlier this week, he went off on the NIL budget and, how Oregon should schedule teams that are closer, more in their budget range. And then Dan Lanning clapped back and said, well, what is your budget compared to UT Martin, who you played last week? Essentially, I don't have the verbatim, but it's Gundy being Gundy. And I don't know if you want to do that going up against Oregon, because Dan Lanning will run up the score. But for Oklahoma State, Flores is going to be starting after a season-ending injury to Hedgeny, probably throwing a lot in this matchup, but that's kind of where you have to weigh quantity versus quality. Oklahoma transfer Caleb Hicks last week had 21 carries against UT Martin, but he did not look that good. He averaged less than 3 yards a carry, so Vailahi could mix in. Rodney Fields was out last week. Again, I don't know if this is a spot to play at OSU running backs. This wide receiver room, Freeman had the touchdown. Davis had the yards. Both had 6 targets. Kind of just a jumble here. But again, if you do think they're going to be throwing the ball a lot, you could take a shot on one of these guys. I mean, 14 is a low team total, but yeah, no, I don't know. I don't think so. On the Oregon side, Dante Moore looked good, ran the ball a little bit, probably priced fairly here. Could easily get there at 8,500. It really depends on the rest of your build. The more interesting thing here is the running backs. So Mekhi Hughes was the big name transfer coming in from Tulane. He hardly saw the field. He was pretty non-existent. I think he had 12 snaps and maybe 3 carries. Was it disciplinary? We don't know. Was he banged up? We don't really know. Could it be that he just hasn't quite learned the playbook to the point that Lanning's comfortable playing him? Honestly, probably. But if it's going to be Whittington, he got the most licks last week. 5,500 is way too cheap. The biggest risk here, though, is that Hughes can jump in at any time, and we know the talent he has, even against Power 5 or Power 4 schools. The wide receiver room really opened up after Evan Stewart went down with a season-ending injury. DeCorian Moore is the big-name freshman, the pretty new toy that everybody's super high on. And honestly, he didn't have the box score that you would want to see to play somebody at 6,600, but he had a pretty sick pancake block on Gary Bryant's touchdown, and that's something coaches love to see. So they're going to keep him on the field. If he's going to block, That is step one to staying on the field, no matter how good of a receiver you are. Malik Benson was supposed to be the top dog at Florida State, but that whole team was bad. He had 5 targets and 5 catches with a score last week. Like I said, Bryant scored, Sadiq scored. So it could be any one of these guys again. Bryant and Benson are easier to swallow price-wise, but I don't mind Sadiq and Moore either. They could easily get here as well. And you could honestly say Oklahoma State's probably on the same playing field as Montana State as far as talent, who Oregon played last week. The final game, and wow, we are at 40 minutes. I feel like I've been talking for 10, but I'm sweating like it's been 2 hours. I promise you that. South Florida at Florida. It's a late hammer. Come on, 3:15 Lord's time zone. We have it in Eastern on our site. I'll give us a pass on that one, though. Byron Brown is a real deal. He's the alpha quarterback. He's the alpha running back on this team. Is a big part of the reason they destroyed Boise State. So 6,700 is a little bit expensive for this matchup, but if South Florida is going to keep it close, Brown's going to be the reason. I don't mind taking a shot on him here. This running back room is kind of a mess. And again, they're all playing second fiddle to Brown anyway. Wide receiver room, got Nimrod in from Tennessee, Rubin in from Stanford, Singleton's returning. These are going to be the guys. Just don't know if this is a spot. Maybe you think they have to throw a little bit more, but I don't know if that's their style, even if they're down. Their best chance of catching up might be using Brown's legs anyway. On the Florida side, Lagway is probably too cheap for this matchup, but maybe fair in terms of this slate. Jaden Baugh is probably where I'm looking at 6,200. He's on the beast list, killing it in the weight room. And we saw some flashes last year too. So he's a solid running back at 6,200. I don't mind him at all. He doesn't catch the ball much, but again, if he was 7,500, maybe I wouldn't be as interested, but 6,200 is good. The wide receiver room, Dallas Wilson is probably out another week. So we're looking at Vernell Brown III and Trey Wilson, Eugene Wilson III. Fun fact, both of them have the same name as some of their ancestors. But Vernell Brown is the 5-star freshman. If you didn't see the game last week when they played Long Island, he had a pretty sick catch, but he looks good. And they're super high on him. He's a 3rd-generation Gator. Trey Wilson actually had 5 catches for negative yards last week, but he has the history, so we know he's good. Sturdivant has the history. He's a Cal/UCLA transfer. But Brown's price is really what you're looking at. 3,400 he's a true freshman, but they really do seem to like him. And then Hansen and Livingston both had touchdowns last week, and they're the tight ends who are going to be on the field, and they're cheap. But, you're really looking at Brown, maybe Wilson, depending on what your structure looks like, if you want to pay up or if you need value at wide receiver. But honestly, a situation where if you did stack Florida, you could run it back with Brown and hope that South Florida gives them a run for their money and pushes this game to like a 35-31 sort of ball game, which is not out of the realm of possibility. A lot better possibility than some of these other blowout games on the slate. But that's it. Again, final thoughts is, you probably don't want to play too many of these underdogs other than dart throws. The blowout teams, they're going to score a lot of points, but if they spread it out a lot, like I said, only one guy from Penn State got there last week, even though they scored in the 40s. There were a lot of field goals. Target games, SMU, Baylor, Texas, just kidding. North Carolina State, Virginia's probably up there. Syracuse, Connecticut, like I said, a little bit sneaky. So a lot of different ways you can play the state. Like I said, a lot of good plays. So that should hopefully spread out ownership a little bit. And then you can feel a little bit more comfortable playing who you want and not getting burned. There's still going to be a couple of guys that get up there in ownership. So just if you do have a membership to a site, hopefully SHIPIT Nation, because we have the best numbers in the biz. But be mindful of that when you're looking at ownership. Maybe this is a better slate to just fade the high owned guys, unless they're in a super good spot. You can eat some chalk, but there are a lot of good plays on this slate. But that's going to do it. Going to keep up the tradition and keep on the legacy. Degenerate 75, my friend James's rule number 1. College football is fun. Enjoy the process. Enjoy building your lineups. Enjoy the sweat. Don't take a single day for granted. We don't get as many as we should. Enjoy that college football is on our TVs. Enjoy that we get to play college football DFS. And like I said, just have fun. Let's all go out there this weekend and ship one for the big guy.